Welcome, ladies and pumpkinheads, to the first episode of Strange Aeons. This is a horror discussion podcast hosted by two non-binary abominations that really enjoy creeping you out in the...
Cute abominations, though.
Cute abominations that really enjoy creeping you out at the night and stalking beneath your covers. So, since this is the first episode, I feel like it's in everyone's best interest that we take some time to introduce ourselves. Would you like to go first, my dear friend Goop?
Okay, yeah. I'm Sam. I'm an artist. I am a college dropout. And mostly I do furry art for the internet. So, if you look up Good Dog Sam Go anywhere, you'll find a bunch of really cute, gooey furry art. So that's mostly what I'm known for on the internet. But right now I'm doing a horror podcast thing because I like to be scared sometimes. So here I am.
And in many ways, me and Sam were very similar, but also quite different.
Especially when it comes to our aesthetics, you know?
Yes. For one, we're both queer people and we're both artists. But while Sam is the master of cuteness, I take more of a unnerving sort of...
It's very much not cute. Like, if it was cute, you'd be failing.
Yeah, well, I mean, not necessarily. I'd say that, certain things could be both creepy and cute.
I mean, yeah, but if someone looked at yours and went, "Aw, cute," like, if a bunch of people did that, you'd be like, "Oh, I've gone seriously wrong here." Like, even that time that I drew that one spookum for you, like, I sent you, like, in my opinion, even that's kind of cute, like, unintentionally.
Yeah, but I think it's okay if, like, the first thing you feel is unsettled, and then you feel that it's cute after you've become, like, accustomed to it. I'd say probably the best example of that is, like, The Uninvited Guest by Edward Gorey. Like, you just see this weird penguin guy.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
And then,
yeah.
Yes. And he's unnerving, but then you can kind of see him being cute.
I feel like kind of like a Tim Burton thing. And Tim Burton isn't necessarily horror, but it is kind of, like, creepy a little bit. Jack Skellington has, like, big ol' eyes and stuff, so, I mean, eye holes, whatever.
It's more macabre than real horror.
But it's still kind of cute, like, it's appealing in that way.
Yes.
It's kind of like a mix.
I definitely say that, Jack Skellington is cute.
He's so tall.
No matter how much that makes me sound like a Hot Topic person.
Oh, I went to Hot Topic the other day. There's no shame. No shame here.
What did you buy?
Oh, I bought some jeans. Super skinny jeans. They're super skinny, super skinny, and then, what are they called? I think it's called, like, a skin. Like, they're, like...
Ugh, what?
No. Like, you go from regular skinny jeans that have a 13-inch foot opening, like, for your foot at the ankle.
Yes.
And then you have their, like... It's called, like... It has a name, but they have, like, a 9-inch foot opening for, like, men's jeans, and I'm like... Okay, I couldn't get my foot through there, probably. So, anyway. Off topic.
I mean, you could... I don't know, I've seen some spooky jeans in my time. But, besides drawing spooky things, I also like to, write. In fact, I'd say that's probably my main wheelhouse, but, generally, it's either some form of poetry or what might be aptly called creepypasta. And I wrote one play, but that never went anywhere. Anyhow, that's enough about me. I think now would be a good time for us to kind of discuss our relationships before, like, what are, like, level of comfortableness is with it.
I feel like that's really interesting because it's not like oh, people like anime, they have different tastes, right? But like when you have like, if you like horror, there people have different thresholds for what they can watch without getting nightmares, or what they can like you don't even consume the whole thing, like you just shut it off, you're so scared. But different people have completely different thresholds for that, so it's like a weird broad thing. But everyone like kind of wants to be unsettled, but it's like completely personal how like what that is for people. And like I really don't think I have the highest threshold for scary stuff. Like I do for literature, but I like could not play a horror video game. Like so oh yeah, so like sorry. So like I feel like the medium matters a lot for people. Like I'm generally pretty okay with literature and like some like still images and stuff, and I don't know, I don't really like videos. It's like if it's a audio visual experience, I'm like, I don't know, maybe this is too much. Like I get the creeps real bad. But like I don't know, a story I can handle.
You can't handle a screamer, but no, you'd chill out with Smile Dog, I guess.
Oh yeah, like Smile Dog was not like, I like, even for a person with anxiety like I have such.
You would bork around with him.
No, well, yeah, sure. Like he's smiling, he's happy. No, but like, yes. What was I saying? Oh my god. Like, oh yeah, I have like a higher threshold for written things for some reason, but I still like to kind of like push it a little bit. So it's like, I don't know, it's like a weird endurance challenge. It's kind of like exercising, because the more you do it, the more you get used to it, the more you have to be creeped out. So like, what do you like? Do you like screamers? You showed, one time you live streamed that Alice in Wonderland thing, that wasn't it Ukrainian? God,
no, it was Czech. Yeah. It was Neko. Oh my
god, I hated that. Like that wasn't even horror. I just hated it. I couldn't watch it. I'm like, nope, not tonight. It was super unnerving. I hated that.
Yeah. So, with me, it's less, like, I can definitely appreciate the differences between how different mediums express horror and how that affects people. But I'd say that, I can basically handle horror in most forms. Maybe not if I was doing, like, one of those, like, real-life haunted houses where they, like, kidnap you or whatever. But, well, I was just going to say, I think where my, like, horror thresholds lie, are more in regards to specific subject matter than how it's expressed.
Yeah. Yeah, like, for me, like, I've read a lot of things, and like recently I found a thing that particularly creeps me out. Junji Ito really creeped me out, and that's like a comic. But like, okay, yeah, I have a particularly like hard time finding something that legitimately like actually thrills me when I'm reading stuff. And like, I don't know, like I've read a lot of creepypasta, and now like just that regular entry level creepypasta does not do it for me. Like, I'm like, nah, this is, I have to have something scarier. So
I understand.
You were gonna say about Junji Ito?
So, well, this is just a little side, but did you know that they have recently adapted a few of Junji Ito's stories into an anime?
I heard that was happening when I was like reading Uzumaki.
Yes.
And I was like, God, I would really like to watch that right now, but
it's on
that's
Crunchyroll
not coming out until like
right now.
It is? Oh my
8
god!
episodes of it are
oh my
on.
god, I have to watch it.
I've been watching
That's
it this
scary as
weekend.
fuck. Oh my god!
But
Uzumaki, yeah. Oh, what's interesting about thresholds and Junji Ito is that like a lot of people will say like, oh yeah, I loved like Uzumaki, but then they'll be like, oh no, the oil comic, I cannot read that. And it's like that's where the buck stops.
I can kind
Like,
of
those horror...
empathize with that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I could read that. It's more for me that I think it's something that everyone experiences to a certain extent, like, with regards to phobias as well as just personal things that you're not comfortable with. It, that just really bother you in horror, as well as all genres, but...
And sometimes it's like...
Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was going to get into a big thing, so you should speak first.
No, if you let me talk, I'll talk forever. Don't...
Well, yes.
Like, feel free to interrupt me, I don't care.
We need to learn each other's habits for a podcast. But...
We will, don't worry.
But...
We're learning, dear readers. Yay.
Yes. Anyhow, what I was... I thought it might be helpful, at least as an example, and for future reference when we're discussing specific works, talk about what exactly my thresholds are. I would say probably the biggest one that I can think of, and perhaps trigger warning because I imagine this is the same for a lot of people, is sexual violence. Like,
yeah,
this isn't a horror movie, but I wasn't able to watch a certain scene in The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo because it was too graphic in that regard. And the thing is, like, I can handle gore. I saw, like, the first Friday the 13th when I was, like, 7.
No, I don't like gore. That's one of the reasons I don't like horror movies, because I don't like gore. Like, I'll look at, like, a gore drawing, but I don't like it.
Well, the thing is, for me, it's... I think a lot of times gore seems really cheap to me, like, just kind of like this primal shock you get. When I...
Like a jump scare.
Yeah, when I enjoy gore, it's like either because it's like subtly used, like it's not the main focus, or because it's like campy. If it's something like Evil Dead, then I think it's cool. But
I feel like if it's implemented right and it's used creatively, it's not bad. Because like I can like if it's in there just to like push the limit of like how much this thing is, like I'm okay with it. But if it's just like here's some severed limbs, isn't it nasty?
Well, the thing is like going back to Junji Ito, he has a lot of gore in his comics, but the thing is like,
but I wouldn't say
his
comics are
otherworldly
gory though.
It's like otherworldly gore, like seeing like these like holes just going completely through people, and there's really not much blood.
God.
There's
probably
the
just like
most famous one is like either the snail people or the girl with a spiral like forming in her face.
I saw a girl with a t-shirt of that once, like that whole page at college. That was interesting. I'm like, is that a Junji Ito comic? Yeah. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. Like, I feel like with Junji Ito, like, his stuff it's wrong. It's not even gory. It's just, like, wrong. It doesn't look like it should be. And I think that that's something that, like, if you can do it, like my brother especially has issues with that kind of thing. Like when he was a kid, like he saw it was one of those like Hallmark, like it's so crazy. Like, okay, so he saw one of these like Hallmark, like, oh, spot the difference or spot what's wrong with this picture kind of like cartoon things. And there was a fish and it was diving out of a bowl of water onto like a carpet. Like it was diving into like blue carpet or something. And that complete like he's neurodivergent and stuff too, so like that completely like triggers him. He cannot deal with it, and it's something that's just like innocuous. Like
I also feel bad for the poor
I don't like
fish,
that.
But
yeah,
but
and it's just like yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say that like that's kind of what I specifically go for in my own horror aspirations. I would say like going back to like the first big thing that I really got into with regards to horror media would likely be the Silent Hill franchise.
Yeah.
And I would say that the sort of character designs, specifically monster designs in that, are all play into that idea of something that is primarily wrong, but you can't really say particularly what it is that's wrong with it. That's what I like.
Yeah, and it's less of like an intellect, like, I mean, it shouldn't be like, it seems like it shouldn't be something that's that scary, but it's more of like an intuitive thing on the creator's part that they have to come up with. Like, there's something like, I don't even know how you come up with that. There's no like formula for it.
No.
You just have to kind of be a crazy person. Like, I assume Junji Ito is one of the like has one of the scariest minds of all men, because it's like that whole thing comes out of you like, ah.
Well, some people say that normal people are the scariest, but
Back to our hot topic. Our hot topic. Normal people scare me.
but
Oof.
I guess the sort of like smaller things that kind of mess with me would be actually relating back to Silent Hill. I've always been really uncomfortable around rust.
Yeah.
And like if like someone uses a sound effect of something like scraping, if like someone uses the sound effect of like a rusty thing scraping against another thing or whatever, it really
Yeah.
like messes with me, like gives me shivers and all that. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but if it's like too much, I kind of have to stop. What else? I'm not bothered by bugs, but like I really don't like whenever people like use the sort of gross out thing of like like small things going into orifices or whatever.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I mean, like, stuff like that is like,
Which Junji Ito does, but I can
yeah.
kind of accept it with him.
Well, like, I feel like that kind of stuff, like gore and jump scares, are all scary. Like, it's not like, I mean,
But more on like a sort of primal level, I suppose.
Yeah, they're cheap. Like, they're easy. They
to appeal
employ.
To the id.
Yeah,
I guess you could say.
Like, they're easy to do. First of all, like, a jump scare is not hard. Like, you just have a scream and a creepy image. Like,
that's a screamer. I would say that there are
jump scares like someone jumps.
There is such a thing as a jump scare that can be done right, but it's rare. It's a tool that you should only get out for very specific purposes.
That was what I've never played Five Nights at Freddy's, but like that was what I heard was the criticism of it, was that like after a while it's just jump scares and you kind of get used to the rhythm of the game. They don't scare you anymore. That's kind of what I heard was a criticism against that, and that's like, I don't know, I feel like that's so easy, and oh my god, words are not coming. Like, it's different because, like, I don't know, I guess that's in any kind of genre or any kind of medium that people use as shorthand for something that just is, like, anime characters have big eyes, right? Like, that's just it. But you can only apply so much moe to an anime girl before she, like, you become like, oh,
Thank
that's
you,
just...
Travis Touchdown.
Sure. I don't know what that is, but
okay.
But like,
no.
Before it's just like, she just is an anime girl. There's nothing unique about it, and you don't remember her because she's boring. So like,
yes,
something that's just like, oh, blood and guts everywhere. You're like, you don't remember it. It's not memorable. It's not interesting.
This is something I was talking a bit about with our mutual friend Dirk. That I'm not really going to refer to what it was specifically about, but I was talking about how like character design works, and it's pretty similar to how writing works in a few ways, at least in the sense that like there are certain like shorthands that have been ingrained through other works, using them over and over again until they're not really fresh anymore. And even if they have been overused, they can still be useful. It's just, if you really want to make something effective, it can often come down to focusing on a thematic strength instead of just going for the like the immediate thing that comes to mind. I suppose like one example could be like, instead of just having like a pool of blood on the floor that someone sees, you could have like the sound of dripping in a dark room and you don't know what it's coming from. they can both basically mean the same thing in the context of the story, but I think the latter is a bit more effective because it's it's kept a bit ambiguous whether or not it is what shorthand would have us expect it to be.
I feel like it's kind of like the less you use in something,
Mm-hmm.
the more effective it's going to be, because the more you can kind of make up to it and the more you don't know. And the less you know about something, the more scary it's going to be. One thing that I don't like about some creepypastas I read is that they just explain everything at the end, and I'm like, but I'm not going to be thinking about it. You just wrapped it up for me. Like, it's just a nice package now.
So I think this is a good way to transition into our discussion about internet horror, because I think creepypastas are pretty much the like prime example of that. And I totally agree that I feel like with a lot of them, because they're mostly written by amateur writers, not people who have really that much experience or like confidence in their own ability, they feel like they kind of have to like tie up every loose end they can find, otherwise like they'll
Yeah.
feel vulnerable. And I can totally empathize with that as a writer. I've definitely had experiences where, because I've intentionally kept things ambiguous, it's made other people kind of I don't know.
Yeah, there's something satisfying about things being wrapped up like that. Like, you understand where the monster came from, and like, oh, it was a secret Nazi bad guy back in the 40s, and he was evil. And it's like, okay, like, I know that now, but it doesn't really change how scary the thing is.
He made Christmas elves as a super race.
Like,
But yeah.
yeah, like, it doesn't change how scary the thing is. To know it, I mean, if anything, it makes it less scary, but it doesn't like it doesn't change the scary thing that happened to just know like what happened there. So, and then it's just like, and then I'm not going to be thinking about it after I'm done reading it. Like, I don't have any more questions. Like, it's over. But if you want to pester someone and like leave it in their mind, you have to leave it like ambiguously, in my opinion. So.
Yes. Well, a lot of people, when they talk about ambiguity in like both in horror and like suspense fiction, they kind of refer to like the, I suppose, cliche that like when you don't tell someone something, they can usually imagine something much worse than you could have come up with. I don't know how true that is,
Well, like,
but I feel like there is truth behind
like,
it, in the sense
oh yeah,
that,
go ahead.
in the sense that I think most people will kind of, when they're reading something or watching something, if they've like seen a lot of that genre, they'll kind of just default to the shorthand when things are kept ambiguous, because they don't really expect the other stuff. And that, I think, being aware of that allows you to sort of play with ambiguity and like subvert people's expectations in a way that wouldn't be very available to you if you just made everything straightforward and tied up in a neat bow at the end.
I feel like if you're allowed to speculate about what the origins of the creepy thing are and like what exactly happens, I feel like it's scarier to you because personally you'll gravitate more towards things that scare you, or things that like your mind just kind of in things that interest you. So like, and that's not something you can do if you just tell everyone what it is. Like, it can't be a different thing to every person. Like, for some persons it's spiders and the other person's it's clowns. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, if it's both spiders and clowns.
Oh, want that Clussy.
Oh gosh.
Oh, that should be a topic for another day. Is the Clussy, or clown pussy, as we call it in the industry. Yeah.
Perhaps. I now I'm off track. What what I was going to say, I think, was that with uh I don't know if this is true for you, Sam, but I find myself whenever I'm like listening to like the No Sleep podcast or some sort of like reading of a scary story, I'll like I'll usually like guess what the conclusion will be pretty early on, like the twist, and then basically I'll spend the rest of it just trying to come up with like interesting ways to like spin the twist or like subvert it that the ultimately the story usually doesn't do, which is not it's not satisfying. You really want a story to like outsmart you because
You do.
otherwise you're just gonna feel like you wasted a lot of
Yeah, because
time.
like I could have come up with that, right? But I feel like that's another. Oh,
I think yeah.
okay.
No,
I
you,
feel like
you
that's
go.
another thing with creepypastas. There's barely any quality control. Like a lot of times, like you have to have a thing right. Like your no sleep post is gonna get karma if it's better. It doesn't even have to be that good to get karma. Honestly, I've read stuff like that's trending on no sleep, and I'm like, this was super lame. Oh my god. But like, I feel. What was I saying? Oh my god. Like I feel because it's such an easy like in that like I could have come up with that. I'm not a horror writer, but like those people aren't really horror writers either. But they made it, so you know. I feel like the
Yes.
thing with horror is that your concept matters a lot more than it does in other genres because like you have like paranormal romance genres that are kind of like cookie cutter and you just put like oh this one's ghosts,
Mm.
this one's werewolves, and like people like it because it's a little bit different. But then when it's horror it has to have some kind of psychological, like at least for me to be good it has to have some kind of like actual strong concept going for it that makes sense. So and it's yeah.
Yes. I think I get what you're saying. I think one thing that's always drawn me to horror is the fact that there there's sort of the like element of
Yeah.
existential horror to it outside of just simple like scares and terror. There's also at least think for really good stories an element of what are the implications of this on the rest of my existence, and does this like completely reframe how I look at the world? And
I mean like I don't need everything to like reframe the world for me cuz you know that gets complicated pretty easily, but I at least want something to
yeah,
like mentally chew on, something that's not like and then a ghost popped out and my video game cartridge was haunted. Like
yes. Well, I what I would say is that I think with a lot, and I agree with you. I think sometimes I can be a bit melodramatic saying things like it has to like reframe my world.
I mean
What,
that's what makes you a better
but
writer than me, so you know, like
I, I don't
I
know
mean
about that.
no, but
Uh,
that's like the thing
oh,
is that like it has to have stakes, right? Like the thing you're writing has to. You can't be like, I don't know, the ghost was pretty scary. I guess he could have been scarier. Like if he hadn't had a nose, he would have been creepier. Like you're writing this like no, if you're like, and then the all-consuming terror shivered up my spine as I screamed out of existence into a void. Like that's a lot scarier than the ghost popped out. He didn't have a nose. That was pretty creepy, man. you know,
yeah, Noseless
Noseless George, they
George,
call him.
the ghost of the
Noseless
gorge.
George, the ghost of the gorge. Hi, everybody. I'm Ghost. I'm
Yes.
Noseless George. How are y'all doing? Anyway, that's more my style is like weird characters and like and stuff like that. So
No,
yeah,
I get it. But I think when I, with my experience with like internet horror and especially creepypasta, I think generally there's sort of this. There's, I'd say the biggest influences from other writers would probably be both Stephen King and Lovecraft, which, of course, I feel I take a lot of cues from both of those writers too. I think they both have great work, even if Lovecraft was something of a horrible human being. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, don't if you're gonna read if you're gonna read Lovecraft, this is my advice to
Oh
everyone
yes, I
out
know
there.
more. I know more about Lovecraft's like
Try to avoid
bad
any
racist
story that
ideas than I do
mentions
about his actual
Africa at
writing.
all.
So, you know, that's
But
more my frame of
anyhow,
reference for Lovecraft.
I was gonna say that I think while
It
those
is
two
in a
authors
lot of
are
his
great for
writings too, as far as I
inspiration,
know. So
you can't like always rely on them.
don't mix
And
races,
frankly, I think
kids.
what horror writers now need more than those two would be the writer Thomas Ligotti, who um, I feel like while he takes a lot
Yeah.
of cues from
Oh
Lovecraft as
no.
well, seems to
Oh
focus
no.
more on the kind of cerebral elements of another author like Borges, Jorge Luis Borges, and okay, so let's take an example. Like my favorite creepypasta is probably Candle Cove by Chris Straub, and I think where a lot of the strength for that story comes from is the fact that
We're talking internet crap here.
you're
So how does
you're
this
sort
tie
of
into
like
my no sleep?
becoming
How does this tie
caught
into my
up
no
in
sleep
this
post
whole
about a haunted
world that
video
the
game
story's
cartridge?
creating. Like it's not just relying on, I don't know, Rugrats or whatever to sort of tie into your like nostalgic childhood sort of impulses. It's creating this entire like setting that you can sort of picture because it has a lot of the elements of things that you are familiar with. However, the last element of the story, the big reveal, and I suppose this is a spoiler if you haven't read the story, but at this point you probably should have, is that you know it it seems that this was like never real. It was a shared hallucination between people, or at the very least, it was something that certain other people could not see. So, and I think that that's kind of similar to what Thomas Ligotti does because it's it's like not just relying on your regular assumptions of the world, but like supplanting these new ideas and new things that you want to think about and you want to sort of spend time with, and then just totally like subverting them and corrupting them by a new realization. It's really it's really something that I
Yeah.
try to do as well, but I feel like oftentimes I can be a bit too obtuse to really get at that well.
I mean, like, I think that just might be an overcorrection on your part. I don't think it's necessarily like a bad thing. I just think you have to like maybe let yourself go back to that normal, kind of closer to haunted video game cartridge, so that it's a little more like hits universal. Because like I feel like with a lot of people, things do fall in between like I don't know, one of my favorite creepypastas is Pen Pal. So it's in between like Pen Pal, which is basically all suspense, and my video game cartridge is haunted. So like I have no idea where I was going this. Oh my god, I don't even know what I'm
No,
talking about.
no, I mean this goes back to the whole like shorthand thing. You know, it's you can be as like experimental and like all over the place as you want, but you always have to have some sort of
Yeah.
like anchor that you can return
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah. You
that
have to have
everybody can
something.
sort of relate to.
Yeah, because I feel like if it's you have to have some sort of it's like film language, right? Like framing and shots and
Yes.
editing and stuff. Like you can be like, oh my god, they made that character look lonely by framing him in a big empty shot, and it's like, well, that's
Hmm.
just kind of how you do that. Like there's like if you want to do that another way, that's not really going to work. So you have to have like you have to be a little bit conventional, I guess, no matter what you do.
And I think while there, just like how there's like room for a whole variety of different sorts of film, there's room for a whole different variety of different sorts of horror that can all be effective. I think it's totally possible for someone to write a very simple story just that's all suspense, like you said, like pen pals. It doesn't really go that far out there, but there's also room for like something like House of Leaves, where the entire story is is not really like cemented in the real world, and it's focused more on like challenging your perception of this, frankly, admittedly fictional place in order to kind of cause disruption in your own reality, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, like the thing that I've been thinking about like this whole day because I was reading it was the Flesh Interface series, and
Mm-hmm.
like the thing about that is that it uses a lot of convention, but it uses that as like kind of a pathway for the conceptual ideas and the philosophical ideas to like come through, like these ideas about like addiction and coincidences and impending doom and all these things, like those are brought to you by things that are familiar to you. So it's not like
Yeah,
it like they use yeah. I really like that series. So good. But
I think that's also another one of the problems with like not just horror but genre fiction in general is that people kind of rely too much on gimmicks. Like they think that as long as I have this like sort of cool idea that'll like scare people or
like Five Nights at
make them
Freddy's.
interested in, yeah,
It's Chuck E. Cheese,
and
but it's haunted.
Five Nights at Freddy's, like I think even that has some positives. Like it has like somewhat of an intriguing aesthetic.
It does,
But the
yeah.
thing is that really, just because it's genre fiction doesn't mean you can skip out on the sort of necessary things for all writing, which is thematics and sort of stylistic as well as um, semantical kind of interaction with the text. Uh, Now I'm just talking in circles.
No, no,
Basically,
no.
what I mean,
I have something good to add this time.
yeah,
It's like if Junji Ito had all these stories in his mind and they were just as creepy as they are, but like he couldn't draw. Like
yeah,
you like his comics would be crap. You'd be like, wow, this guy sure can't draw. Like I don't even know what's going on here because like no matter how good his idea behind it is, like if his drawing's not good, if like he can't make a face or if he can't make a like if he can't do values or anything like that, like it's not it's basically
yes,
useless because there's no way for the ideas to get from his brain to your brain if it doesn't go through the drawings. So and so I think with writing, like conventions and stuff like that is the pathway, is the drawing. Like I mean, aside from just like prose, I
sure,
guess, because I guess prose is also your other way to get things to like the English language, but also like tropes and stuff like that. Maybe tropes is not the best
yeah.
word, but for creepypasta, tropes is definitely the right word. So, you know.
And I mean, I think something that a lot of people forget when they like read something by say like Stephen King, like they'll remember like the the things that scared them, like specific moments, like say from Misery, they'll like remember the part where she like breaks the guy's leg, or like runs over the cop with the tractor, but they won't really think about sort of the themes that this sort of this vessel of horror is meant to kind of elaborate upon. And with horror, the themes kind of have to be horrifying as well, but more in an existential sense, because like going back to Misery, there's sort of themes of like of abuse, of being unable to sort of have any agency over your own body in certain situations, kind of the feeling of not being able to express yourself creatively because you're kind of being strangled by the expectations of others. All of these things like underlie the sort of horrific set pieces of the book. Yet when you read something like creepypasta, for the most part, it's just going to be the set pieces, and they're kind of going to ignore the actual sort of undertones that make it resonant with people.
I think it's also because it's so short form, like, because I mean, like, if you're good at doing short form stuff, or if you're good at doing long form stuff, like, it's really effective, right? Like, it's because it's so easy to consume. But like, when you don't really have any strong concepts, and when you're not really good at short form things, you just kind of write a thing, and it's just kind of a thing, and it just kind of pitters out, and no one really cares. No one cares about that post on No Sleep that you made a month ago, because like, they didn't think about it. It was yeah. So, which like most of this applies to like regular art and like regular writing and regular drawing and like whatever, because but with horror it's different, because it's about fear, and fear is like our most primal emotion aside from like arousal. So like,
well, I mean, if you want to go back to Freud, it's like in the id there is the pleasure principle and the death drive, and that's basically what it is: fear and arousal.
His death drive idea were fucking stupid, in my opinion. But anyway, that's the tangent.
Well, we'll go on that when we go to our psychoanalysis podcast. But this is
no, let's not.
Horror.
Yeah, he had bad ideas about a lot of. I mean, whatever. I'm salty about Sigmund Freud for like just really personal reasons. Like, there's just
at least his daughter was cool.
Sure.
Like she was a lesbian who ran an orphanage. That was cool. But
oh my god, I'm a lesbian who runs an orphanage. Wait. No.
You're one of those things.
No, I'm neither of those things.
No, you're an orphanage.
Yeah, yes.
You don't run one, you are one.
I consume the children. And the orphanage was me.
And you regurgitate them.
Yeah.
Regurgitate.
I regurgitate them. What was I thinking about? Like, I don't know. I think it's weird because in order to scare, like, human beings nowadays, and you want to, like, make them remember stuff, it's gotta be cerebral, but, like, something that's primal, something that, like, I don't know, aside from, like, going into one of those, like, kidnapping haunted houses, like, it's a jump scare and it's lame, but, like, oh no, I'm thinking about my own impending death and my existence in this large, vast universe, and, like, however I frame that, like, what was I saying? Oh my god.
No, I get what you're saying. Like,
yeah, like, now we've attached big concepts to like, the idea of fear, and that's, like...
you could be reading, like... You could be reading, like, The Myth of Sisyphus and be way more scared than you would be if you read Jeff the Killer or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, because like if you really think about it, and I don't know, like, because people have different levels of things that are scary. Because like if someone's chasing you
Hmm.
down an alley at night, that's gonna be way scarier than reading a Stephen King novel, right? Because it's real and
True.
like your body
But it's also a
physiologically
different
finds it
sort of
scarier.
fear.
It is a different sort of
Like,
fear.
I think one, like, is more, like, what you read is more obviously, like, kind of a thematic thing and ties into, like, sort of universal ideas, while the other one is specific trauma that affects you personally.
I don't know, like I don't know if there's any way to artistically recreate like that kind of fear, which is arguably like more real and scary. I don't know where I'm
Would
going
it
with
even
this.
be worth doing?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's something a lot of people don't really ask with regards to this, and it's that like if they're you know ultimately even horror, something that I myself like love as a genre, is mostly a tool just for understanding yourself better.
Yeah.
And if you're if you kind of like lose sight of that and say, oh, I want to be scared as much as humanly possible just because that's something I find, whether cathartic or pleasurable, I don't know. That's sort of like seeing the forest for the trees, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yeah, I think that's definitely right. Like for me the reason that I like scary stuff is because like it lets
Like
me
it's
it oh yeah.
like no, well, I was just gonna say a short thing. It's that it's like the difference between like sitting down in the dark at night and trying to read a good little scary story and like spending all day looking at like car crashes on websites or whatever.
Yeah. Like for me the reason that I like scary stuff is that it gives me control over how much fear I'm feeling because I do have anxiety, and anxiety is a fear based disorder, right? Like I have OCD
Yes,
too, and
I also have anxiety, and it's definitely a very like it's perhaps the best way to describe it is like the feeling that uh, everything's like teetering on an edge, and any small mistake could just make everything collapse.
yeah, you feel unsafe, right? Like when
Mm-hmm.
you have a panic attack, that's just your body taking over from what it assumes. It's getting your blood pumping, it's getting your adrenaline pumping so that you can not die from the thing that you're scared of. But that's something dumb because it's like a paper or your taxes, and you're like, why am I doing this now? So but like for me to have that like control over like what is scaring me, and to have it like set out in front of me to explore, because like
Yeah,
that's open, is kind of the reason that I like it, because I can now think, oh my god, I can now think like, I don't know, why is this scary? Like, can this actually hurt me? And that's one of the biggest answers or questions that you have to ask, especially when you have anxiety or just if you're a regular person. Like, can this actually hurt me? And if it's a story, like, of course it can't hurt you, right? So it's kind of like a weird coping mechanism in a way. But then you'll overshoot it and you'll be having intrusive thoughts about a thing for like 2 days, and you're like, God, I wish I hadn't read that. Let me read more.
yeah. But I mean, I totally understand that. I would definitely say that part of the reason why I enjoy horror so much is because of its therapeutic element, its cathartic element, like that it allows me to kind of isolate these feelings that I have all the time and kind of, you know, displace them onto a fantasy or unreal setting. But I don't think that's all of it. I
No,
think
yeah. That's what I was gonna say, was that like,
even if you personally can't relate to that, I think it can also be a tool if used properly, for empathy towards people who do personally feel that kind of stuff.
I think it's that, and also, like, it's kind of fun to be scared. Like, not gonna lie, so
Yes.
it's fun to be scared. So,
It is.
again, it's like that halfway in between,
It's hip
like,
to be scared.
yeah,
Squared.
it's hip to be squared. It's kind of like, it's halfway between, like, oh, like, riding a roller coaster is fun, and, oh no, I'm gonna die one day. What does that even mean? Like, what will happen when I die? So, like, it's kind of somewhere in between there is where you enjoy yourself the most, and then somewhere in between there it can be dangerous and you can have issues. So
Yes. But this is something that I've actually thought about a lot with regards to the potential of horror lately, and it's partly based in like the history of horror, which you can go back to like H.P. Lovecraft with is that like most of the time horror shorthands have been exploitative of certain people, especially
yeah,
like mentally ill people. Like
yeah,
you
big
see
time.
asylums all the time where like people that are suffering from mental illnesses are shown to be like these horrible monsters that are incoherent and will, I don't know, bite your ear off.
Which is
And
honestly some bullshit. I don't know. I could probably talk about
yes.
that for a whole like podcast another time, but like,
And I think that would definitely be something good for us to cover. But
yeah,
really what I'm getting at is that I feel like while a lot of horror like gets lazy or just hateful and like resorts to that kind of stuff, I think horror has the ability, because it can be so cathartic and because it can be so illustrative of these sort of psychological elements that make us like not trust ourselves and be scared by the world, that it can help people who don't experience things like anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, OCD, all these different things, kind of empathize with people who do.
yeah. I
I
think
don't know.
no. That's a really good idea, in my opinion, because in the past it has been super exploitative of mentally ill people, and like I've been hospitalized for like mental health issues. Like that's not something that I hide. So like it's like having a mental illness is scary. Dealing with mentally ill people in like that kind of a situation is not that scary. But I don't know, like having like an anxiety disorder gives you a lot more insight into what's scary, into why things are scary. So I feel like that's probably people who do that will have better ideas for stuff like horror. And they won't have just like the lame kind of stuff because you could just you know more, so you have more insight and you can be more interesting.
Yeah.
Like
And
yeah.
and if I can use my own work as an example, the last like short scary story or creepypasta, whatever you want to call it, that I wrote, I intentionally focused on specifically what I was talking about with this sort of like empathetic potential, in that the character I made was primarily defined by the fact that they suffered from intense chronic depression and really really expansive anxiety, both of things that I have to deal with. And I think from like the responses I got to it, it was kind of like confusing because there weren't really any supernatural elements. I kind of used that in some of my writing, but it was more of a it was more focused on like taking taking that and create and kind of like forming the like horrifying situation around it, instead of using it as just a sort of way of sort of just a tool to enhance the situation, I guess, because because I really feel like in a lot of cases, when you have a character that is suffering from a specific mental illness, maybe like schizophrenia, it'll be used as like a tool to enhance the horror, in that, oh, is that a monster, or am I just hearing things again because I have this sort of psychological problem? That's not what I was aiming to do with this piece. It was more this psychological problem I have is so like it's so like intertwined with every element of my life that that this sort of like downfall for me is pretty much the realization of this terrible thing. And once again, I feel like I've gone on to a bit of a ramble with that.
No, like, I don't know, I could say similar things, but for me, like, my depression and my generalized anxiety aren't as bad, or, like, at their worst, like, I don't know. Like, what I'm trying to say is that OCD is really scary, especially if you have, like, I mean, like, there's the general, like, day-to-day you have, and you have to have everything just so, or like, I don't know, you just, like, have these vague feelings of unease, and you do things to fix them, and you can't stop doing them, and, like, oh, I'm gonna talk about Junji Ito in a second, okay, but, like, there's, like, one of the reasons that I have such a high tolerance for, like, psychological stuff is that I've had OCD, and at times, like, it's, I don't want to be, like, too exaggerated, but it's kind of like being in a horror novel. Like, because the thing that you're scared of the most is the thing that you think about the most, and the thing that sets you off. So, like, if you're afraid of spiders, you're only going to think about spiders from now on, and that's your number one fear. So, right off the bat, you've just created your own personal hell. So, and, like, then seemingly random things just set it off, and you're, like, convinced that a thing is real because your brain is broken. So, not that you're a broken person, but your brain's responses to, like, getting rid of thoughts and your brain's responses to anxiety don't work like they should be working. So, like, it's kind of, like, that's scary. Like, that's not as scary to me because, like, it's not true. Like, none of the things that you think will happen if you don't do your compulsions will happen. But it's scary to write about it like if it was going to happen. So if someone, I don't know, did something with that kind of insight into that kind of thing, because having OCD is scary, right? Like, it's really not fun at all. So, and I feel like I was going to talk about Junji Ito because a lot of his, the scariness in his stuff is from the theme of, like, these people are being driven by something that they can't control, and, like, they don't, yeah, like, the guy's obsessed with spirals.
That your own thoughts are betraying you.
Yeah, like, they don't know why, yeah, exactly. So, like, that kind of thing is, like, something that doesn't really scare me as much when I'm reading it. It's something that I, like, can understand, but I'm like, no, I kind of just, I'm desensitized to this.
No, I can see that. Like, it's, like, you could look at, like, I think the first chapter of Uzumaki as maybe a pretty good, like, allegory for OCD, which I don't have, I should say, but I think it works pretty well because you have the guy's father who becomes totally obsessed with spirals, so much to the point that not only is he making spirals with pottery, he turns himself into a spiral. And then you have his mother who becomes so horrified and paranoid about spirals that she avoids it at all costs, and once she figures out the cochlea in her ear is a spiral, that she, like, digs it out of her head.
The second part with
you
the
have
woman.
these.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, like, I think even as someone without OCD, I can kind of see that sometimes this feels like just the two options you're faced with, that it's either you're going to become totally obsessed with this thing and you're worried that you're going to just end up hurting yourself, like messing with it, or you're just so worried about like avoiding it that you're afraid that you're going to do something to yourself unwittingly because you're so focused on avoiding it.
The second part is basically OCD. That's basically the thing, except most people who have OCD, I don't know, I can't speak for most people, but like the difference between the second chapter of Uzumaki with the woman like avoiding spirals at all costs and mutilating herself and stuff, the difference between that and like actually having OCD is that generally OCD can't really hurt you. Like I don't know, in some very extreme cases something like that might happen. That's why it's so scary, but like in my case, like it got so bad, like I had to get better. So like it's not like, I feel like if anyone has OCD and they're relating to that kind of thing, they can't really take that as like, oh, I'm doomed kind of like mindset, because you're not. Like the intrusive thoughts you have and the compulsions you do are arbitrary and are because of the chemicals in your brain and aren't really some existential thing that can hurt you. No bad thing will happen. So I don't know, like it'd be pretty crappy horror if it ended on such like a cheery note, but that's kind of like, that's what characterizes my experience with OCD, is that I kind of got better from the intrusive thoughts and stuff. So I don't know. I feel like that could be an interesting, I don't know, like a Babadook kind of thing where you like learn to live with it and like understand and treat it fairly and stuff, you know, instead of,
Yeah.
you know, I cut this thing out of my ear. But like most people would take that and they'd be like, oh, that's terrifying. But for someone with OCD, you're like, oh, that's just kind of life at this point. So, you know.
Yeah.
We were talking about creepypasta, weren't we?
Oh, yeah.
Who cares about that dumb shit? Dumb internet shit. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you know, it's been an hour, and I think we've talked about some pretty interesting stuff on this first episode.
Yeah, sure.
I think real quick, before we end this, we should probably plug anything that we might want people to check out if they listen to this. What do you have, Goop?
I have a Twitter where I post furry things, at goop_Sam.
Spooky werewolves.
So if that's your... Not even spooky werewolves, they're adorable werewolves. Like, so if that's your shit,
Spooky
come over
cuties.
to that, or like, I don't know, I basically don't have an online presence. Just hit me up on Discord. Just talk to me. I don't care.
Yes,
so.
I'm here. Oh, and, yes, so, if you want to check out stuff by me, like my short stories and all that, you can go to eldritchhat.tumblr.com, and try to deal with the horrible website design that I did through, homebrew HTML. But, besides that, I've been working on this huge project, with making my own webcomic, which is something that I've been wanting to do for years. It's called Angela. It's somewhat inspired by the work of Junji Ito as well as Neil Gaiman.
Yeah, it's good. Go read it. It's good. Read
and
it.
if you want to read it, you can go to angelacom.tumblr.com. Anyhow, I think it's time for all you creatures of the night to get back to your belfries or what have you, and your coffins and your coffers and your sepulchers, and we'll see you next time.
Your
whenever that
belfries or your
happens to be.
coffins.